terror attack. The Pew Research Center did some polling. 83% of Americans believe terrorism should be a top priority. 14% say it's important. Only 1% of those questions say terrorism is not a top issue. Mark Thiessen is a former speechwriter for President Bush and author of the book Courting Disaster. Mark, good morning to you and welcome back to our program. You gave a lot of comments to our producers, and I appreciate that. I want to go through this here. Having been in their shoes, meaning the White House folks, you feel for Obama's speechwriters. What do you mean by that, Mark?
Well, they probably started working on this address shortly after Thanksgiving, meeting in the Oval Office with him, and they probably sent at least a detailed outline, if not a draft, with him on his Christmas holiday. And then came the Detroit bombing attempt and the Scott Brown election, and they've been scrambling to try and put together a speech that addresses what the issue that has been put on the front and center of the country, which is the handling of terrorist detainees.
Well, how should he handle it tomorrow night? I mean, you're a speechwriter, you're in there, you're drafting this, you want a certain message to resonate. What do you have him say?
Well, the problem is not so much spin, it's policy, and he has to. Americans saw the attacks in Detroit as a wake-up call, and they want some sign that the president saw it as a wake-up call as well. As I point out in my book, the polls show, a Pew poll, 71% of Americans support enhanced interrogation of terrorist detainees. They oppose the closing of Guantanamo Bay. They oppose bringing these terrorists to the United States. They oppose civilian trials for people like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and they oppose, by large margins, giving Miranda rights to terrorists. And sometimes one event crystallizes all those discontents for people, and that was when the Obama administration ordered that the Christmas Day bomber to the FBI to tell him, you have the right to remain silent. And Scott Brown addressed that issue in his campaign, and his pollsters say that that was the issue that put him over the top. So if Obama continues to defend reading Miranda rights to terrorists, he's going to be in big trouble.
So I was wondering how you were going to make the connection to Scott Brown, and you just did it at the end there. What about the whole thing that we heard in Ohio over the past few days? We're going to go fight, going to continue. We're going to continue to work for the programs that we see that are right for Americans. From a populist standpoint, that might be a very good thing. Just reading your comments, you don't see it that way. Explain why.
As a Republican, I hope he does that, because I think that's the most damaging thing he can do to himself, is to go in and say, fight, fight, fight. Americans don't want to hear the president say, I'm going to fight. They want to hear him say, I get it. There have been seismic events between this terrorist attack in Detroit and then the response of the people of Massachusetts in giving a Republican, Ted Kennedy's seat, a Republican who campaigned on not giving Miranda rights to terrorists and interrogating them for intelligence. If Obama continues to defy these trends and continues to, I mean, is he going to go there and explain, to continue to say in the State of the Union address that we actually got intelligence from this guy in the 50 minutes that he was questioned before he was given his Miranda rights? He's going to be in big trouble. He ought to go back to what he said on the campaign trail, which is that terrorists do not deserve Miranda rights, and his administration made a mistake, and they're going to stop doing it.
Do these folks deserve Miranda rights? The candidate then said. Then he continued, do they deserve to be treated like a shoplifter down the block? Of course not. Will we hear that?
I certainly hope so. I think the president could go a long way in healing this breach between him and the vast majority of Americans on the issue of terror by saying that I said on the campaign trail we are not going to read Miranda rights to terrorists. We shouldn't have done it in this case, and we are not going to do it anymore. That would go a long way. But the message he has to get to the American people is, I saw it as a wake-up call too. Because Americans, we went for 7 years.
You contend that that would go a long way, but would not go a long way is if you say, I'm going to keep on fighting.
Well, exactly right. I mean, and the one place that he should say he's going to keep on fighting is in places like Afghanistan. And I wonder, it'd be very interesting whether or not his Democratic base in the House and the Senate oppose the surge in Afghanistan. Is he going to challenge his party
to support the surge? He's already laid out his strategy on Afghanistan. We know what he's going to do. He's going to be aggressive in that fight. He's laid out the plan for more troops to go.
Sure. Sure, no, that's exactly right. But his party opposes it, and Congress has to fund it. Is there going to be a call to fund the surge and to challenge his party to get on board with this strategy? And also, is he going to go in there and call for Congress to pass funding to close Guantanamo? The American people do not want to see Guantanamo closed. They don't want to see these terrorists brought to the United States. These people couldn't get a visa if they walked into an embassy, but Obama wants to put them on a plane and fly them to Thompson, Illinois.
Let me get to a point that I mentioned with Karl Rove last hour. It is one speech. People are going to make a big deal out of it. Can you redefine or define the course of your presidency in one speech?
I think the State of the Union is a unique speech in that sense. It's the one night of the year, when Americans who don't follow this back and forth in Washington all the time, who really are living real lives and out there and are not following this every day, tune in to take an assessment of their president. So it's an opportunity and a moment of peril for the president. If he goes in and expresses that he gets it, that he's learning his lessons, that the Detroit attack was a wake-up call, then he might get some support back. But if he goes in there with this defiant, I'm going to fight, I'm going to fight, I'm going to fight attitude, he's just going to harden the opposition. He's going to harden the independents who are leaving him over this issue. You know, when he loses a state like Massachusetts over the issue of terrorist interrogations, that ought to wake him up.
Mark Thiessen, thank you for your time. You've been there. You've done that. Mark, thanks.
Thank you.
Martha.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people would say there have been a lot of speeches, but as Karl Rove said, you know, you